Welcome to Motorsports Tech Talk with Brian and Eric. Eric, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How about you?
That's good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Just it's episode 2. Whew.
Episode 2. See
Can't.
that F1 race?
Whew. Yeah, that was a doozy. That was a doozy. That was I mean, honestly, it's everything I could ever hope for. I mean, we got some excellent George Russell action. We got to see some midfielders get some big finishes. So I guess spoiler if you didn't watch the F1 race, maybe go skip ahead or something. But I'm sure everyone's seen it by now. I mean, it's hard. I can't even go into like Facebook or anything without seeing millions of posts about it. But I mean, that's just my Facebook though.
Yeah. If you haven't listened or seen the race, I guess skip ahead. I don't know to when, but just do it. Or put us on pause, watch the race, come back, and get back to our podcast.
Yeah, it's definitely one to watch for sure.
It is.
Probably my favorite race of the season.
Yeah, I think honestly you could expand it past this season. Like it was wild.
Yeah, I guess the last couple of seasons have been a little low,
A little dry.
maybe one team winning every single race, kind of dry.
Like boiled chicken, unseasoned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it was a good one though. So I mean, it started off with George Russell taking the lead through the first corner.
Yep.
Really showing that a couple things. Maybe Bottas needs to step up his game. It shows that potentially. You got someone coming in. There was. I mean, people like to over dramatize everything, especially in F1 or really any sport. But
yeah,
going in, they were talking about how George. I mean, he's quite a bit taller than Lewis. I think he's like 6 foot tall. I'm not sure how tall Lewis is, but I think he's like 4 inches taller or something.
Yeah, most drivers aren't 6 foot.
Yeah, although the cars will be specifically designed basically for that driver. Like they'll take their measurements into consideration when they're sizing everything. They don't have like template rules or anything like Formula SAE does. If you guys ever saw those, they might have some template rule, but maybe it's really tight compared to that giant thing they made you squeeze through in Formula SAE. But
Yeah.
But basically, his like the pedal box area and stuff was also too small for his size 13 shoe or whatever that he has versus Hamilton. So he was struggling a little bit for fit, and his feet weren't fitting so well. I think they said that he had to squeeze into a size lower shoe. But it's probably just Russell trying to make excuses ahead of the weekend to make sure to cover himself off ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean we all know that pro move. Or when you're
Driver excuses.
yeah, you got to get them ready.
Yeah, you gotta.
And if you get them out before the race, it's even better because then no one can say like, "Well, you just said that because you didn't do well because you haven't even performed yet."
Yeah, you gotta be on point with it, which I think he was. All the drivers do that. They especially in a situation like this, they try to get out ahead of it. They're like, well, I haven't got much time in the car, my head doesn't fit in my helmet, or I don't know, like just they try to come up with everything, get ahead of it, and I not really, I wasn't believing everything he was saying, but I also didn't expect him to just be able to jump in there. Different car. I mean, he's been driving at least a Formula One car all season, but just the slowest one.
Yeah.
Like maybe Formula 1.5 or something car.
Yeah.
Like,
something between Formula 1 and Formula 2.
Yeah, like I feel like to be considered a full Formula 1 car, maybe you need to finish on the lead lap of a majority of the races in my eyes. But, they're out there. Williams spending lots of money trying to do whatever they're doing, and it's just not working for them. But
one day it will, maybe.
One day. I mean, they sold it, though, to some conglomerate, so maybe...
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe now the money will be there because now it's not family owned or whatever. But yeah, so Russell jumped in and he led a couple practice sessions, but practice is, you never know what teams are doing, if they're running test programs or
Right.
actually pushing for a fast lap. I imagine with Russell, they just told him, go out there, get comfortable, get as many laps in.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine for Russell they wanted him to get comfortable with the car, but as you mentioned, you don't know what other teams are doing. Lots of times they're going for they're looking at specific sectors or different strategies, so their true pace generally isn't shown.
Yeah.
Um, so it's hard to compare. You can't say, oh, this guy who's practicing just to get comfortable with the car and is trying to set fast laps.
Yeah.
You can't really compare him to another driver because you don't know what the other team's doing.
Exactly. It's not till qualifying do you kind of see everyone's hand that they're playing with. So, but usually, I mean, practice two sometimes they'll do it because it's usually the same condition. Practice two will be the same conditions as qualifying the next day as far as the time of day. So sometimes that's usually what at least the announcers try to use as like their litmus test to the performance of everyone. But again, it's not until qualifying you actually see it. But yeah, once they got to qualifying, Russell ended up qualifying 200ths off of Bottas, with Bottas getting pole. That's
I think it's pretty good for someone who hadn't been in the car until that weekend.
yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, you got up to speed pretty quick. Mercedes went for a interesting strategy in the end of qualifying and they just did like, I think they did three laps. You normally only do two, so I don't know if that was because they wanted to give Russell extra chances or I don't know, but I think they just weren't planning to run the soft tires, so they're like, let's just burn them all up in qualifying. Might as well.
Yeah,
we're paying for them. Got to use them.
Yeah, exactly.
but
yeah,
money. But it was close. Verstappen was right behind in third, and another couple hundredths off. So it was shaping up to be a close race, and but yeah, but Russell really, honestly, really impressed me. But like, yeah, it's he.
I agree, and the thing that's impressive. Well, I guess it's not limited to one thing, but we see a good qualifying pace, right? He gets a good start. And then if I told you he finished well after he got a good start, you might just say, well, he's in a Mercedes. He gets out in front, does his thing. There were a few incidents, and he fought his way back up through the field twice.
Yeah. So, yeah,
he impressed me.
For sure. Like if he was just just got the start right, which Bottas has been messing up recently. If he would have just gotten that right and then, it's still won from there. It showed that, I mean, at least he has the pace to drive a Mercedes fast and faster than Valtteri Bottas. But yeah, it might not show like how's his racecraft in that kind of situation. So yeah, I mean, it did help, I guess, that in the first turn we got a lot of the other major contenders all kind of took each other out. You got Leclerc who kind of locked up. It looked like he was expecting Perez to kind of take a wide line, try to go around the outside of Bottas, but he ended up kind of trying to do it like a switchback, cut back into the inside, and Leclerc wasn't expecting it. Kind of dove up too far up the inside and kind of made contact, and somehow Perez limped away with just I believe it was a flat tire, but Leclerc's race was over, and then he also kind of collected Verstappen as well. So you kind of had basically everyone who qualified, third, fourth, fifth, all kind of.
Yeah, a lot of the big names went out, and yeah, I mean, maybe collected is a strong word.
Yeah,
Verstappen just
kind of drove into the wall.
Yeah, he just there's the wall. I'm gonna hit it. I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, so that sounds bland, obviously here. He was avoiding the incident. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He didn't just decide to drive into a wall. He was avoiding the incident.
Yeah.
But, I don't think he had contact with another car.
No, he didn't. He just kind of had a closing door, sort of. He was reacting and then hit the gravel and just kind of shot him off into the wall. So, yeah, it was not a good race for him, of course. But then that led to just a Mercedes 1-2, just kind of out in the clean air.
Yep.
It's definitely one of the more exciting Mercedes 1-2s in the last several years, just because
Right.
of the different drivers at stake here. But yeah, I mean,
And
basically, it looked like a runaway Mercedes show. And then kind of late in the race, a safety car came out due to, I believe it was Russell's replacement. I can't. Aiken. He hit the wall and kind of left his front wing on the track just as a souvenir for someone. But he was able to make it back to the pits. But they recovered the wing, and there was no kind of room, so they had to do the safety car. And Mercedes just, I mean, it was the right time. They were many seconds ahead of everyone, so they can get a free pit stop out of it. So they decided to double stack them, just to not to give either driver an advantage.
yeah.
Double stacked them and accidentally put one of Bottas's tires onto Russell's car, which is a big no-no in Formula One rules. They're able to correct the issue within 3 laps, but it basically forced Russell to come back in after his pit stop. And then on top of that, they didn't realize it until they were putting on Bottas's tires. So they put on his new set, but one of them was Russell's tire. And then knowing that, after realizing it and knowing they would have to pit him again too, tried to damage control and just put back on the set of tires he came in on.
Yep.
And then from there,
Which, I mean, as you noted, it was already an extra pit stop,
yeah,
like a bonus free tire set. So it's not the end of the world to put
yeah,
the tires he already had on.
yeah, and his tires weren't too old compared to some of the other guys out there. They weren't terrible. Like, and they were planning to go to the end of the race with those if there wasn't a caution like that. But they had to put them back on old tires back out, and I believe it was fifth. And then when Russell came back in to get his tires changed off to all his tires, he was back right behind Bottas. I think it's sixth, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was fourth and fifth there, but basically a couple cars ahead that they had to take care of before they could get back up. But there was like 10 laps left, so I mean, we all know the Mercedes is super fast.
Yeah.
There's some time to come back, and it was looking like Russell really impressed with a couple passes first getting around Bottas, which was on much older tires, but he still made the move fast because the more he would have waited, the more the other guys would have gotten away. So he made the move real quick, and then got past the other two. I believe it was Ocon and Stroll. He had to get by, and then he was doing fast laps, chasing down Perez, who was now out front. Which, he had that incident at the very beginning, and just really did a really good job working his way back up to the front.
Yeah.
And then from there, he got a flat. He must have maybe been from some extra debris out there, but he got a flat rear tire, and Russell had to come in and he had to pit. So basically, we lost our shot of seeing maybe Russell, and it probably would have been a really good battle between him and Perez, with Russell having new tires, but running out of time, and the Force India, the Racing Point, had good pace as well.
Right.
So yeah, unfortunately we didn't get to see that, but he changed tires, put on the softs, and then again passed like 6 or 7 cars. Still got his first points in a Formula One, which is good to see.
Yeah, he went out in, well, I was going to say, I thought it was
15th, I think.
Yeah.
And he ended up
somewhere in the
9th.
teens.
Yeah.
And then, pulled it up to 9th.
Yeah, so it was
a few laps.
It was pretty impressive, and of course, he's on this. He's basically on like a qualifying setup, low fuel load, soft tires in a Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean that's as rocket shippy as you're gonna get.
Yeah,
in any of those cars.
But he took advantage of it, and got right back to where Bottas ended up, and got his first points, and really proved, I think, that he had what it takes to kind of be up at the front in Formula One. And then Perez held it on and got his first ever win in Formula One. I think, believe he set a record for first or most races before your first win. I think it was somewhere around 180, 190 or something, because he's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But I think, it was a great race, and I think what this kind of what we take from it is it's kind of what we were talking about last week about. Well, can you just put the driver in from another car into that Mercedes and be competitive, and that's definitely for sure. I mean, we weren't surprised by that as far as versus the other teams, but then also just is kind of the conversation around like, is Hamilton really that good, or is Bottas really that bad, or kind of what may come up sometimes. But
Yeah. Well, and this raises a lot of interesting questions about drivers, I think. So we saw Russell do really well, right? And then it was impressive. I think this in some ways helps my theory that all the Formula One drivers are so good. At the tip of the spear, they're so close to each other that it's an engineering competition between the cars. And at least for a race, it's about who has the better car. But we did see him, as you mentioned, sort of make passes early on when he had to make them. And we know some drivers in Formula One who will sort of take their time to try and make that happen. So I think that there is certainly still an element of driver proficiency here.
Yeah.
So, he's obviously a very talented driver, and it was fun to watch. I think it's just sort of interesting all around because sort of every viewpoint I was looking at was sort of backed up,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, he's never driven this car before, and he's just storming the field. But also he's taking chances that other drivers wouldn't. So
Yeah.
And another thing you'll see, I think where drivers come in more than the engineering of the cars throughout the season.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want to say anybody can set a fast lap or win a race because it's very difficult to do. But I think the differentiator between a lot of these good drivers, when you consider the bottom of that tier level is still phenomenal drivers, right?
Yeah.
I think when you get to that point, the differentiator between the drivers is quick thinking, I guess, in short, right?
Yeah.
Being able to identify a situation and what risk to take and when to take it or when not to.
Yeah.
You'll have some very fast drivers, but they're so aggressive that they end up doing poorly in the season, in the championship because they've wrecked out too many times,
Yeah. There's a fine line being that like aggressive guy that makes the right moves and being that crashy guy that no one wants to be around on track.
Yeah.
Like, and it could just be circumstance really, but it's also judging those opportunities, those passing opportunities, and
Exactly.
and having maybe that little bit of an out when you're making the move. Well, at their level though, it's maybe you should. I think that's the problem with maybe some of maybe like a Albon or a Bottas is that they give themselves too much of an out when they go for a move and then just don't commit enough. They just kind of they kind of show themselves, but they either don't finish the move or they just don't think they can make it maybe and just don't even try. It's definitely, there's been a couple of times I think this season with Bottas where you just expect him to be able to, he should just move up through the field. He's in the fastest car, especially when he's around like a Renault or a McLaren that just doesn't have the race pace compared to them. It'll take him like several laps to get by, and some of that might be track specific, where the DRS zones and that kind of stuff is. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like in this case, Russell. I mean, he was trying to prove himself, so he's going to drive pretty aggressively, I imagine. And he made the moves work, and I think it looked really good, and it does show that, or like you were saying, a lot of drivers can be fast in Formula One. I mean, I would hope so. I hope
Right.
I hope if you get there, you're pretty impressive talent. But I guess one thing maybe the casual fan won't think about is is these guys have a lot of seat time working their way up. I mean, it's like their only job as from birth,
Yeah, essentially.
basically, and they're karting and then transition to open wheel. They're racing all the time, and they're getting as much time in there and racing and seat time, which is king. So and it's a whole kind of, especially for Formula One, they have a very well defined kind of ladder system to work your way up. So
Mm.
you'd hope that the kind of the cream rises to the top, but kind of one extra factor that some people might not think about. I mean, they see it maybe, but just don't consider it enough unless they're in racing and they're spending the kind of money, even for something like Spec Miata or something. You're emptying your bank account, let alone Formula 2, and I don't know what those budgets look like, but
I'm sure it's ridiculous.
I imagine it's just absurd. But a lot of drivers, I mean, people talk about it with like Lance Stroll, like his dad bought him a Formula One team basically, so he has a seat. Not exactly, but I mean, Perez, who just won a race for them, doesn't have a seat, and Lance Stroll does have a seat next year at I guess Aston Martin now, but. So it's you can kind of see the writing on the wall there, but and Stroll's had some good races, but it's very obvious that Perez is performing better, especially in race.
Yeah.
So like there's Eric and I have talked about this a lot, just that money factor. Are there other drivers out there that are just really really good, have a lot of talent, just didn't have the funds to make it all the way up there to Formula One? And I think it's definitely the case.
Absolutely. I mean, it costs so much money just to get seat time that there's no way that someone didn't. There's not missed opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, and
that does raise a question, though. Maybe we can get to it in a minute. But we're talking about money and seat time, and these people starting in their youth.
Yep.
And then talent as well. How much of it is natural talent, and then how much of it is seat time?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something just between the two of us we've talked about a lot too. Because I mean, we're ourselves aspiring race car drivers. We
definitely pretend.
Yeah, pretend aspiring. I mean, we know there's absolutely zero chance of doing some sort of professional motorsports, getting paid like those guys. Like, we're just so far behind. We started too late, even though we're in our 20s.
Yeah,
it's still way too late.
Might as well be in the grave.
I know.
In the world of motorsport.
Exactly, but we just wonder with some of the people we've raced with, against, just how much there is kind of a talent, a knack. I mean, with a lot of things, there's going to be just your kind of the person's intelligence is going to be somewhat important, like just being able to problem solve fast, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interpret data,
reaction times.
There's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, being physically fit is going to help you in an endurance situation, but I mean, it's like the shorter races you can get away with maybe not being super fit. Like an F1 driver can't, but yeah, we've all seen some of the beer bellies in NASCAR and stuff over the years. Maybe not as much anymore. Now you got these thin young guys that are again being bred and raised to do NASCAR and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what there's with the racing. There's a lot of different, I think, talents that kind of filter in to being a good racing driver. Whereas maybe if you just have genetic disposition to swimming, like Michael Phelps, like it's he just has like the perfect body shape. He's like shaped like a fish.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be hard to beat him if you're some like shorter person, or you just it's just you don't have the body type that he does. You can practice all day, you can train, you can probably become pretty good, but that little bit more that you need kind of is there in the genetics, whereas that doesn't really exist in racing. It's ultimately down to the equipment is very important for sure, and then how you operate that, but you don't have to You don't have to be, a marathon runner or something
Right.
to have that kind of endurance or something to do it usually.
Yeah. Well, I think just like going home and doing practice math problems, you know, seat time is practice for that quick thinking
Yep.
factor you were talking about, so um, it might be a little bit easier for someone who's naturally a little more intelligent, but I think you can get there with practice, with seat time.
Yeah.
I have a problem with how expensive practice is. It's very difficult to get. But, yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why we're such a big fan of the driver mod, is I think even though there's some sort of genetic predisposition, I think just about anybody can get there with practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of these, any F1 driver is going to have hopefully a lot of practice working their way up.
Right. I think when you start that young, they're also going to have that genetic predisposition because they don't have the time to get to practice.
Basically, yeah.
They're pretty much racing from day one.
Yeah. So it's like it's kind of second nature to them. They don't think that's just how they've been kind of grown up to think and act and stuff in the race cars. Because kind of going off with the experience, I mean, there's so many different, I guess, so much different experience you get. Like at a base level, there's just learning that car, learning the track. I mean, after a while, you should have enough, like, say our home track, Gingerman, I've probably lapped that place hundreds, maybe even thousands of times.
Well, it is the greatest track in the world.
It is it's the heart and soul of motorsport and in North America.
It is.
But like, so at the point I can, if I'm driving a champ car race in someone else's car or something, like the track isn't one of the things I need to worry about. I just need to get up to speed with the car and then I should be pretty good to go. But then, once you master that car, or like, once you have your own car, like I'm doing with Spec Miata, where I know the car really well. It's my car. It's size. I set up the seat and everything fits me perfect, and I'm very comfortable in it. I know how it drives, how it reacts to my inputs, all that kind of stuff. So now I'm very comfortable in the car. I'm comfortable with some of the tracks, like let's say Gingerman in this case. Then from there, actually, you kind of have to do races at that point to really get, I think, to that next level of experience, like knowing where you can pass, knowing what parts of the track have grip when you're not just trying to set a fast lap, when you're in a racing situation and on the outside of someone somewhere, like knowing like, oh, I can take, there's grip on the outside here. I can keep it here versus, or if you didn't know that and maybe there isn't any grip out there and you
lose it.
You lose it. And so,
yeah, I mean, racecraft is huge if you're racing.
Yes.
Obviously, right? So
of course.
Anybody who doesn't plan on doing anything more than a track day through their life, I guess that's not the next level for them. They don't need it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's very important for racing. I'd say it's one of the more critical items. You'll see pro drivers. I've watched some of their in-car footage where they are identifying and reacting to a problem before I've watching the video and knowing what's going to happen before I've identified the problem.
Yeah.
And that comes with racecraft. I was watching a video of a pro driver, and the driver in front of him had gone out wide on the entrance. It's not like he went through the corner and went wide.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looked like he overslowed and he went really far to the right. I wasn't really sure what was going on, but this driver is already like in the ABS, unfortunately, and counter steering because he knows that this other driver is going to continue to overslow and try and take this late apex, and based off the conditions, he wasn't going to make it through the corner, and they would have contact. So he is already deep into the ABS because he knows he's going to contact this other driver because he knows what they're both going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sitting here watching the video like, hey, he's leaving the door open for you. So,
Yeah,
it's huge. It really is.
Yeah, so it's there's a lot you can learn, and yeah, and some things you can only learn by racing. And I mean, there's a reason why they keep Kimi Räikkönen going, and he's in his 40s now. Like,
Because he's awesome.
With that too, and has the best interviews in the game.
Yeah.
It's probably nice for the engineers because they don't really have to talk to him much.
Oh, I'm sure it's great.
And yeah, it's just like, let's go to the debrief. Oh, Kimmy just left. Okay, I guess no debrief. Let's all go home.
Yep.
But yeah, it's there's a lot of levels, and for the most part in Formula One, you'd hope that all of them have developed those skills because they've met those kind of prerequisites. Usually, unless you have a lot of money and maybe a really good name, and even then, you still, like in the case of Mick Schumacher, he just won the F2 championship, and it gives him the validation. Everyone knows he was gonna make it there eventually. He's got some support. He's got the name. He's got a lot of things people want. So it's not surprising to see him up there. It's nice that he proved himself. He
did win.
He won. It took him to his second season, but not everyone's just gonna jump in and immediately get there.
It is unfortunate though.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the backing, you have one shot.
Yep. Yeah, because I'm sure there's
one opportunity.
So many drivers that were given that opportunity, worked their way up, and just had a bad season, and then we didn't have the money. If you don't have the money, then we don't need you. We got this guy over here that has the money.
Yep.
We'll give him a shot. So money talks, and a lot of facets of life, but very much so in motorsport, like painfully right in your face. So like,
yeah,
some people like to speculate, oh, well, if this kid his parents weren't rich, with this or that. Like in this case, they're like, yeah, I have a lot of money, and so can you give me this seat? And then they say yes. That's kind of how it goes. Because
even the people who come by it honestly are generally still spending horrible amounts of money.
Oh yeah.
Because just seat time is so expensive. Like,
yeah.
You want to practice, you want to get better. Like, that's the way to do it. That's the honest way to do it.
Yeah.
But it's just so expensive.
You just can't get away from it.
Yeah.
But ultimately here, I think, speaking of driver mod, I think Russell really proved that he has the driver mod.
I think so. Yeah.
It doesn't, he never got points before, but his car holding him back, not him. So, I think it would have been just as interesting to see Hamilton versus Russell or something. But seeing where Russell was, he's at least better than Bottas, who drives that car every week and has a lot of experience in it. Didn't have to get up to speed at all. Should be very comfortable in his car, made for him.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty impressive to see him kind of perform like that. I think Bottas is in a little bit of a slump, at least the second half of the season slump. But I guess that kind of leads to also the psychological aspect of it. I think that's also a very, very important part. Like,
not getting in your own head is very important.
Yeah, it's so easy to just psych yourself out. Like I've done it a couple of times where I think, I start getting down on myself, like, oh, why didn't I brake later there or whatever, and then you see someone come up your inside and you're like, well, I don't think I can brake that late because I'm struggling with that right now, so I'm just gonna let this guy by, like that kind of thing, or maybe you're trying to make the move and you just don't commit to it fully because in the back of your head and you're like, I've been struggling with this brake zone or something like that. So
yeah. And honestly, that's one of the things I really love about it.
Yeah.
About motorsport is it's it's a head game,
Mm-hmm.
but it really teaches you to like let it go, right? If you screw up, your mind needs to be on the next corner.
Yeah.
Don't. There's no getting back. Like you broke a little early, scrubbed up too much speed, or whatever. Like next thing, next corner's coming up pretty quick.
Yeah. And,
You know,
yeah, you see it all.
You got something to deal with.
You see it all too often where, yeah, a driver loses one position and then all of a sudden they're just going backwards.
Yeah.
And they're getting in their head, they're losing momentum, and it's a big mental game too. And yeah, that's what makes it, it makes it still very human of a sport. Even though there's all that mechanical design and money and all that other stuff, it's still, at the end of the day, that guy's got to make the right decision in the car.
Right.
And in this case, Russell showed that he could make those decisions. Unfortunately, he just had a lot of bad luck. It seemed like the team did everything they could to prevent from basically both cars from taking a win.
Yeah.
But
secretly, Lewis is in the back pulling the strings.
Yeah, he had
You're
like
not gonna win without me.
Hit the like, he just called up Toto and was like, "Slow them down. I've seen enough." So yeah, it's interesting to see. It's definitely Perez definitely did one heck of a kind of boosting his resume there at this end of the season. Maybe I know I would have really liked to see him in the Red Bull car. I think he could give Verstappen a run for his money.
Yeah.
Or at least just make it so both Red Bulls are kind of always finishing in the points.
Not a fan of Albon?
Just knowing how many people lose the opportunity to race in F1, like they gave him a shot a year or two, and it's just, I don't think it's working out. And speaking of the mental game, like I think he's in his head more than anyone else.
Yeah, probably.
But also I think from what I saw from like the Formula One Drive to Survive Netflix series,
good series, by the way,
very good. Where in that point it was Pierre Gasly getting the scrutiny, but I think it kind of showed that maybe Christian Horner plays these weird mental games with his drivers, it seems like, or maybe their drivers are reading too much into it, because I don't know, this idea of Max Verstappen, he's so good, he's the greatest driver in Formula One right now or something, and then Christian Horner is like his biggest fan.
Yeah.
It's probably hard to, like, jump into that team and feel like you have a chance to be the number one. Right. You already feel like a second class driver.
Yeah.
You're already the number two right before you even have a chance. So maybe that just gets in their head. It definitely seemed to get in Gasly's head. I mean, he left the team and he got his first win this year in the AlphaTauri. And it's pretty, it shows that it just maybe wasn't that, in that case, it just wasn't a good fit for him, and he just kept getting in his own head. And once he kind of was relieved of that stress of being in that really high pressure cooker kind of situation that is Red Bull Racing, he relaxed and gained his confidence back, and then put down some really good performances. So
yeah, and something else that it could be, complete speculation, right? But the relationship between the driver and the engineer is pretty important. Mm-hmm. Communication, implied or subtle. You used to see it a lot back in the day, where the driver and sometimes the engineer would move to different teams. Mm-hmm. The driver would take the engineer with him.
Yeah.
And that was because, you find someone that's a good fit and they know what you want. They know what you mean when you say something. And, it's possible that, maybe he just had better interaction with, AlphaTauri or whoever he was working with there. Right?
Yeah. So,
and that, all that, that back in the day is a reference, for Carol Smith's book. Mm-hmm. He refers to that a lot. So anybody listening to this podcast will refer to Carol Smith plenty of times in the future. He wrote quite a few fantastic books about cars, I'd recommend them. So
Yeah, for sure. Tune to win, drive to win,
engineer
to win.
Yep.
That's the one.
I think for any of you amateurs at home, Tune to Win's going to be the best read.
Yeah, definitely.
Drive to Win is about working your way through, I guess, driving series to the top.
Yeah.
Mostly. And Engineer to Win is more engineering stuff, getting into the details of materials, why to use them, why not, things like that. So,
yeah.
For anybody at home with an amateur race car, read Tune to Win. It's a fantastic book, and you'll get a lot out of it.
Definitely. Like, Drive to Win's pretty good, but I think the other book for driving is the Seat Time book.
Yeah.
I mean, Drive to Win's a good resource there, but also at the end of the day, Seat Time.
Yeah.
Seat Time is king.
And I mean, Drive to Win it's a great book, and it's amazing how true it is now. Right? If you go buy the book, I think it has a newish, semi-recent Red Bull F1 car on it, but the book was written a little while ago. It's not a new book. But in the pro racing paddock, it's like it's a script. Like, it is so true. It blew my mind. It is just crazy. So, I mean, it's a good book. It's an interesting book. But anybody just at home trying to go fast.
Yeah, Tune to Win.
If I had to pick one, I'd say Tune to Win.
Setting up your car, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very important. Even, in Spec Miata, we all have the same car, and yet some people's cars just seem faster. I mean, some of that, of course, is the driver mod, but other people, it's a combination of driver mod and then setting up your car right to take advantage of that driver mod. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
very, very important. But yeah, I guess talking more on the Engineer to Win side, again, one of our next topics here is recently Eric here, while at one of his racing events, he got a chance to look at the new Supra GT4 car.
Yeah.
And
I did indeed.
he got to kind of crawl all over it, take a look, and see what it's gonna kind of how he thinks it's gonna do next season in IMSA. And I mean, it's already been around the world in kind of some of the Europe series, but it's making its IMSA debut next year with Riley, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's my understanding anyway. Is Riley's bought a car, maybe two, and they'll be racing it. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of that car. I love it. And at a cool starting $190,000, it's one of the cheapest GT4 cars.
Yeah, I've been trying to work on my employee discount for that.
You should.
Maybe the lease program there, but
you should work a little harder because it's an awesome car.
Yeah, so far no luck, but I'll keep it up. Maybe I can get some kind of Christmas gift from work or something.
That'd be nice. Yeah. That'd be real nice. I'll take care of it for you. But no, I mean, looking at this car, it's got all the fancy race bits that you might want to see on it. I don't have my pictures of the car in front of me, but if memory serves, it's got Bosch ABS. Just as an example, it's a fancy part.
Yeah, right? And you were telling me about how just like the details were there, the comfort, and working on it, the ease of.
Yeah, exactly. It's done by Gazoo Racing,
of course.
They've done some pretty high level motorsport cars for Toyota.
Yes.
And you can tell they know what they're doing. It's done by people who race. It's generally incredibly easy to work on. The front with McPherson struts, some of that stuff's tucked away, so it might be a little pain to tune your front shock or your damping. But for the most part, that car is beautifully set up to work on, and for drivers and crew to be able to do things quickly. Um, and clearly, it's honestly, it's. I mean, it's a real race car, but it's a really good race car.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, having,
and I mean, it's just all the small details that, it's a little strange to explain if you haven't seen other
yeah, I
full race
guess.
cars. But I mean, like the fuel cell setup,
Hmm.
just all these basic things.
Yeah, like having had some experience with the Cayman GT4 car, like what
Hmm.
were some little things that you noticed that were different? I mean, this is at least front suspension is similar, McPherson strut,
Yeah,
but then multi-link rear instead of the good old McPherson rear that the Cayman has. But
yeah.
but as far as like like ergonomics or maybe electronics, did it seem to be a much more kind of unified package there?
Yes and no, I guess, in terms of unified. The Porsche, I think, did a fantastic job at most of that GT4 car is stock. Like a very surprising amount. You could, if you broke parts, you could go to the Porsche dealership and just get replacements. It's awesome for that. But there were a few things that made you scratch your head, and one of them I already sort of mentioned on the Supra was the fuel cell. Just not a fan. It was more of a box. It didn't. The way the fuel was loaded into the cell, generally they have these internal containers and baffles and everything. So,
Hmm.
um, so your sensors are more linear when you're reading, depending on how you're reading.
Hmm.
Um, and the Porsche one never seemed to be that consistent,
Okay.
honestly. We could get different capacities from fuel drops if the car was hot or if it wasn't.
Okay.
Um,
Man, that's really gonna screw you up.
yeah, it does. And supposedly what I've heard, I don't know if this is the actual reason, but that bladder that sits inside the fuel cell is relatively stiff.
Hmm.
It's a fuel safe bladder meant to like make sure the car doesn't blow up if something happens. So that's important. But it gets hot and it sort of relaxes and then it fills in the creases of the fuel cell, supposedly. Um, but I mean, it's not just that, right? It's how they did the whole internals
Hmm.
with the doors and the baffling and the ceiling of it.
On
You know,
the Toyota.
uh,
Oh, you're
it
saying,
was good on the Toyota,
yeah, yeah, not
not
good,
not
not
on
good
the
on the
Cayman.
Cayman.
Like the Cayman looks like they had an intern do it, or maybe someone who just started a Porsche. I'm not trying to just to destroy their career. But I mean, it just wasn't good. And the Supras seemed like something meant for a race car. It's what's used in most real race cars,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
GT3 or up. Um,
Yeah, I think I forget. Doesn't also like the driver kind of ergonomics are really nice. Does it have an adjustable pedal box?
yep. Yeah, it's adjustable pedal box, which is great, I think.
The steering wheel setup was pretty nice on it.
It was sweet. I mean, all of it was sweet, right? The one I was looking at had two screens, I think. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's you expect the drivers to be able to tailor the steering, or I guess their ergonomics to them, tailor it
Hmm.
to themselves. But the way they do that is different, and
Hmm.
I'm a much bigger fan of the sliding pedal box.
Yes.
Um, Mostly because you can solid mount the seat, which is
Hmm.
safer, and it's going to be a little stiffer, right?
Yeah.
You just have fewer joints in there.
Yep. It
Um,
can be a little better for driver feel, kind of
yeah,
that seat of the pants feel. You can.
yep.
It's more direct. You're not losing it through some wobbling, and
Hmm.
you feel more directly bolted into that car. You can feel the car a little better instead of maybe some of it being drowned out by the seat kind of moving around a bit more.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But so I mean, in general, I mean, it's really hard to give you any more examples just because I loved the whole car, the whole package,
yeah.
right? The brakes were pretty good, but you can't really compare that to the Porsche. I don't think. In terms of components,
Mm-hmm.
I would say the Supra's, the name brand was
Mm-hmm.
there
Mm-hmm.
for the stuff they had and the stuff they used. From, calipers to master cylinder to the whole pedal box, right? It was fancy stuff.
Yeah.
But Porsche's, really because of the vehicle layout, generally have the best brakes. So it's hard to compare, right? Like, this one looks nicer, but I can almost promise you that the Porsche will brake better.
Yeah, just kind of kinematically,
Yeah,
weight distribution wise, it can't really get better than a mid-engine car for braking.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But what I am really excited about for this Supra for the next season is, well, it's turboed,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what that means to me is that the power can be changed easily. So for anyone at home, IMSA uses a BOP or balance of performance to try and keep the racing close. But what you'll see sometimes is if one of the cars just from the manufacturer isn't as fast as another car, they try and give you some BOP. They take some weight out, or they let you add more camber. It all depends on their analysis of, the race and where you were slow and how to correct that, right? Like, there's multiple things that go into it, but lots of times you find yourself, or not lots of times, but sometimes you'll find yourself wanting more power.
Mm-hmm.
With a naturally aspirated engine car, you might be stuck, right?
Yeah.
Right now, the Camaros and I'm sure the Mustangs are naturally aspirated and they use restrictors. So if they needed more power, they'd just have a larger restrictor. The Porsche had no restrictor. So there's no upward mobility there.
So they just ended up taking more weight out.
Yep. Yeah, we just kept taking weight out. Just taking more weight out every time.
But still got smoked on the straights.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, every time I see a turbo car, even though I love the sound of that flat six. And I love V8s, right? But for understanding that BOP is going to be used, I prefer turbo cars for racing.
Yeah.
Just because you can stick your little thumb drive in the car. This is the high boost tune, and you send it, So yeah, I think that's going to be great. And I think with the Supra bringing a new car to IMSA, I think it's going to do really well next year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we were talking about before, kind of whenever a new car shows up, they're kind of predisposed to kind of give it a little more because they want the manufacturers to stick around. They want them to sell maybe more cars, so they stick around. And then on top of that, I mean, it's a new car to the series. The team's going to be getting up to speed to it, so it's not going to be super fast right out of the box because seat time and experience are, as we said, very important. So as they set up the car better and better for the drivers who are getting more and more time in it, it'll get faster as the season goes on without really the car itself getting faster as far as the horsepower, the weight, or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
The team will understand the car better.
Yeah, the team will just get faster as a whole, and so maybe you give it a more favorable BOP at the beginning of the season so they can keep up. But as soon as they dial it in, then it's gonna,
get the smack down.
They're just kind of gonna run away with it, and then then you bop them again. But maybe they don't immediately do it, and it takes a little bit.
Yeah, I mean they don't do a bop every race. It's an aggregate of a few races, so it doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
And generally with a new car, if you do it well, if the team gets up to speed and controls their pace well, the bop will come too late in the season, and they should already be able to win the championship.
Yeah.
But I do want to make it clear that I don't think they just give it to the manufacturer.
No.
It's just that the car hasn't been run in the series before, so you have to start somewhere. And because you want to keep business there, you'd rather undershoot and then work your way up than overshoot, like overbop this car.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's just, horrible
Yeah, no one
out of
wants
the
it.
gate, and then nobody wants it. And then in this case, with the Supra, just because that's what we're talking about, Toyota would be pissed because the car just shows up and sucks, but not because of anything they did, right? It's just popped. So I think the series generally does a pretty good job. It's just if you have to go to one of those extremes, or if you have to lean to one side of overdoing it or underdoing it, with a new car, you want to underdo it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen it many times before. If anyone's been following, I guess, IMSA for a while, like, I guess one was the Ford GTs, because GTLM is a very highly balanced class. It's all manufacturers, all pros. So it's very clear to see when one car is outperforming the others. So, I mean, Ford, you could see it. Some people say there was some sandbagging throughout the season, and maybe it was more just like we said, them developing the car. In that case, it's not a turnkey car that they're selling as a customer car, and that it's their factory kind of racing program. And
GTLM cars are not on the same scale for anybody listening as a GT4 car.
Yes, so they're still developing the car itself. It's not a turnkey package. It's all bespoke, basically.
Yep.
And so in that case, they're still figuring out. It's a new team too. They haven't been around like a million years like Corvette Racing has. And so, you see it, Corvette shows up and they're going to win Daytona or whatever that year, and the Fords aren't even going to finish, which it's just not a surprise. It's a new car.
Yeah. I mean, how the new C8s didn't do well at Daytona.
No.
But Daytona V1.
Part one.
Yeah. When IMSA mysteriously redid Daytona.
Yes.
Yeah. They did well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
just the nature of the game.
Yeah, and then they show up to Le Mans their first time, and maybe through all the qualifying and everything, they just didn't really.
That seemed like they let some sand out of the bag.
Yeah, that one was a little much, but I mean, Ferrari did it too, so it wasn't. It's not like Ford's being some kind of.
I think it was,
super villain here. Everyone's trying to do it.
Yeah. Well, if memory serves, that was the first year of turbo cars.
Yes.
So controlling that BOP, since it was the first year, giving the series a benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't done that before, so maybe that's where some learnings came in.
And because both the Ferrari, the 488, and the Ford GT were both turboed, and I think that was the first year for both of them.
Yep.
And I one thing I remember now is also I think the practice day where they a lot of times kind of do some bop adjustments after that. It was much warmer that weekend, and then the actual race was an abnormally cool weekend, and highly benefited the turbo cars just because they could much easier control their cylinder temps and just basically got free boost from the denser air. I mean, they still had to keep it to a limit, but at that boost level, they're making a higher percentage more power than the naturally aspirated vehicle would be. So it seemed to just really benefit the turbo cars, both of them in that case. And then maybe they also kind of missed the bop on both of them, not understanding how those turbo cars work, especially when you go into the night there too, because that's a pretty unique part of a 24-hour race.
Right. Well, and I mean, that year too, I believe when they missed the bop, then they realized they missed it. That was the first time I noticed a secondary emergency bop.
Yes.
Later in the weekend.
Yeah, after qualifying.
All the other teams complained, understandably.
Yeah, for like over a second faster.
Yeah. So then they added some BOP to the Ford and maybe the Ferrari too.
I think so.
It wasn't much.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah, they ran away with it.
So
some cynics out there say It's because it was the Ford v Ferrari
Yeah, it was 50th anniversary of their
anniversary.
original win
Yeah.
at Le Mans, and so Ford stuffed
Sells.
the FIA coffers full of cash,
Yeah,
and
or Ferrari, dude. I don't know.
yeah, could be.
Why you
Could
got to
be.
bring Ford into it?
Oh, no reason, no reason. But yeah, it's but going back, there's just a lot of things can happen with Bop. It can be tough with a new car that they're basically making it faster every weekend without actually adding kind of numbers to it,
Yeah.
weights and horsepowers and stuff. So um, it's always a moving target, and I think that's why a lot of people give BOP a bad rap. They think it's ruining the show, but I don't know. Without it, it'd probably just be one team winning
Yeah.
every race, and we see how that happens in Formula One, and people don't like that either. So
Yeah. What can you do?
yeah, I guess
No one's ever happy.
yeah, I guess if it's the team you want that's winning every single race, then you're going to be
Sick.
happy. But not everyone's rooting for that team. So,
No.
but what are you going to do?
Just sit here and complain about it on a podcast, I guess.
Yeah, basically. Yes. Whew.
But
That's what I would do.
yeah, that's why I think it's a great idea. But before we move on, I talked about how much I love that Supra GT4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I do want to note with the McPherson front,
Mm.
McPherson is lighter,
Yes.
fewer components,
Cheaper.
cheaper. It's okay. The negatives with it though are that you have stubby little instant centers,
Mm-hmm.
and not great control, and just not great in general. Anti-dive,
Mm.
under braking. So those are two things that I think Riley will have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Same things
Um,
you had to deal with the Cayman.
Yeah, honestly. And it's not to say they can't be overcome, but they're challenges. And when you get the car worked out, like when they have a year and a half or 2 years
Mm-hmm.
and they've dialed it in, when they're just trying to refine that last little knob,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is that last little knob. It's what they're just not going to be able to nail down perfectly. You know what I mean?
Because they're coming from that Mercedes, which I believe is double wishbone front,
I think so.
and it's just there's a reason why most formula cars and that kind of stuff have that set up. I mean, it's as far as a road car perspective, it's harder to package. It takes a lot more room up, especially versus the McPherson. It's going to be a lot more components versus the McPherson, so cost more. But what it gives you is that much nicer camber curve.
Yeah.
And it's also tunable from like the instant center. They're going to be
They're much longer.
much longer.
So when you go over, anybody who's not super technical, the instant center is where the wheel end is rotating about. And those will combine with contact patches and lines to give you a roll center at some point. But the instant center, just think of it as one corner of the car. So if you have an instant center that's close, the wheel's going to want to move a lot more aggressively. If you have one that's far away, not so much. So let's say you're going around turn 17, the last corner, I believe, at Sebring. Very bumpy. The car with McPherson's going to be much more of a pain to drive than the one with
because basically the whole wheel's kind of moving a lot more around in a few different directions, sort of, versus just the up and down you want. It's kind of shifting more, almost when you're looking at it rotating. It's kind of
it's a more, it's going to bounce around more, I guess.
okay. So, and then I guess the one thing McPherson kind of struggles with is gaining camber and bump.
Yeah, McPherson's pretty linear. So your camber curve is not even linear. It's pretty flat.
Yeah.
You're not really going to gain or lose much camber.
Yeah.
And notice I said much. It exists.
Yes,
You know.
yes,
Um,
but it's way less than you can set up a double wishbone for.
yes. And then when you're in a series that dictates a maximum static camber, that is a downside, right?
Yes.
Because you can't go much more than that. So,
Yeah, and there's a couple other little things like McPherson can tend to have a little. It kind of binds a little bit more because you're asking this damper to. Normally, that's just a two force member. It's just going compression and tension. You're then asking it. You're introducing some bending forces into it, and shocks don't really like to be bent, so it can add. Usually, motorsports dampers are set up. They're designed to be able to take that kind of bending force, so it's not going to be
yeah.
a problem structurally. Just maybe there's a little more stiction there.
Yeah. And that depends on, too. Like, I think there's going to be more stiction, but they do a lot to try and eliminate that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final effect really depends on in what direction,
Yes.
you know. Um, like, for instance, when you're turning, um, you know, because the strut is connected to the upright, right, or the knuckle, whatever you want
Mm-hmm.
to call it. It tries to rotate the strut. So if you don't
Yeah.
have a bearing at the top, which some production cars don't, you have a lot more friction when you're steering, and
Yeah.
it helps hurt your steering feel.
Okay.
Now all the motorsports ones I've seen have nice roller bearings up there, but
Yes.
I guess the point is there's there should be more stiction. I would assume there will be, but
Mm-hmm.
the approach to how to deal with it or what you can do to deal with it depends on the direction that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just limited, you know.
Yeah. So these are all things that I imagine Riley Motorsports has dealt with McPherson cars at some point over the course of their time
Yeah, they've
working
been
with
around for a
cars.
minute. So,
But as far as from season to season, the crew that they have, they're gonna have to get up to speed with everything there. It's very different. That maybe the little tricks they used before to get the setup right, and then also the driver too. The feedback they give is just going to be different now. It's going to have to be,
mhm.
and then once they get up to speed, then I'm sure it'll be very very quick, and then maybe the bop will work out for them. But until then, I guess. But next season, hopefully, we get to see those cars out there. It's always good to see a new car.
It is. It is. And I'll be really interested to see what Riley does with it. I think it'll be sweet. I think it's pretty promising, and despite the downfalls we just discussed, I think it'll do pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
Moving down to cheaper cars, though,
yeah,
just in case you can't afford the legitimately cheap out of the rest of the field $190,000 GT4 car starting. I believe last time we briefly mentioned that you never finished a car, but you're building a chump car.
yeah,
Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. There's it's with kind of like BOP and everything. There's certain cars kind of fit into it a little better. So Champ Car kind of has its own built-in BOP. It doesn't really change during the season or anything, but it's a point-based system for those of you who don't know, and each car is valued at a base level, and then they are allowed to add mods that cost a certain amount of points, and they're basically all the way up to 500, which is your max before you start getting penalty laps. So past there, you're getting for a normal length 7-8 hour race, you're getting one penalty lap per 10 points at that point. So it's going to be hard to find a mod that's 10 points that's going to give you a lap's performance over a race. So for the most part, that's kind of your diminishing returns point. You want to keep under 500, but it's still possible to win over 500. But knowing that, when I was looking at a car with being the engineer I am and wanting to try to find the kind of the most absurd car anyone could even consider trying to race an endurance series. But maybe because of that, maybe the points were a little low on it. I chose a Mitsubishi Starion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the car's older than me. It's old.
Yeah.
Definitely
I mean,
not the most well-known car, but it's kind of probably one of the first. It's one of the first Mitsubishis that kind of showed up in America that was branded as a Mitsubishi. A lot of Chryslers were kind of, they call them gray imports, where they ship across on a boat and they show up in the port and someone's like, oh, why doesn't this have a badge? And then some Chrysler guy walks up and accidentally drops a badge right into the center of the car there.
Just smacks a Pentastar on it.
Yep.
And
calls it done. Oh,
Yeah.
we built this. So, because back then
my
there's
friend is a Plymouth Arrow.
yes. Yeah, let's not talk about that. But there's so it's one of those, there's people might know of the Chrysler Conquest. They might have seen those around. They're less rare than the Starion as far as the numbers. It was almost, I think, 4-1 as far as every Starion per Conquest. Maybe it was 3-1, but I found myself a genuine Mitsubishi Starion and thought, you know what, this will be great for budget endurance racing, because I mean, the first thing you think of when you think Mitsubishi is reliability. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're just like known for it. Everyone knows it.
Everyone I know who loves Evos says they're so reliable.
Super reliable.
Never have to work on them.
DSMs, Mitsubishi Eclipses and Talons, and those are also known for their reliability.
Yeah.
Very.
They don't blow up.
No, they're indestructible. Basically, you can't go wrong. But yeah, so. And turbo cars, and we were just saying, turbo cars great for racing. Like, it's great for bop and all that stuff. I mean, maybe it doesn't apply to champ car.
Maybe it doesn't apply when you don't really have a moving bop.
Yeah, but we were just, you were just telling me how great turbo cars are for racing. So naturally, I think turbo cars, I mean, they rack up so many wins in these budget endurance series because everyone always talks about how they can't. They can't keep their engine hot enough or their coolant hot enough. Well, I got the solution for you there. It's a turbocharged engine.
Yeah,
you'll get it up there real fast. And
nice.
There's this little thing called heat soak that it's always nice to have in your car. Everyone loves it,
Mm-hmm.
when your intercooler gets to the same temperature as the outlet of your turbo. Well, it's probably still working, right? It's still.
That's how that works. Yeah,
that's how that works. The temperature differential is 0.
Hey,
it's
man,
still.
you have cold air passing over it.
Yeah.
As long as you're still driving straight.
So yeah, I basically chose the hardest possible, and maybe it was because I'm trying to I just don't want to finish the car ever, but
Yeah.
by making it as hard as possible, because the easy way is to just grab an E30, Miata, any of the well-proven cars out there.
Mm-hmm.
And just go race it, which I ended up doing with the Spec Miata. But as far as my champ car efforts, I'm still stuck with this Starion. But then I thought, you know what? Why not have two? So now I have two. This one's caged already, so it was already racing, if you can call it that.
So you only have two.
Well, parts cars don't count.
Okay.
Parts cars don't count. I mean, I can't just go to the local AutoZone and be like, I need a turbo for a 1988 Mitsubishi Starion. They're gonna be like, huh, what is that? And then they're gonna search it and nothing's gonna come up. So, or if it does come up, it's gonna be $6,000 for a turbo or something like that. But
Yeah, nobody wants that.
so, you gotta. I basically scoured the Midwest of all the Conquests and Starions I could find to be able to put together one running one, but still haven't been able to do that.
Well, that's off to a great start.
Yes. So
tell me more about the caged one you bought. Ready to go. Why aren't you racing that right now?
well, it's just the engine was kind of pre-blown up. It's how they come sometimes. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, not that it's hard to keep those engines together in an endurance racing scenario, but sometimes things happen. So yeah, it was a Lemons car, and I had picked it up because as far as I could tell, at least it was somewhat finished. But yeah, it was a little worse off than I thought. So out goes the engine, and that's another project for the winter. But hopefully she'll be ready to go for the next season.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. So, speaking of Champ Car just had a race this past weekend here.
Yeah, VIR.
Yeah, VIR. It's like we said last week. It was the one of the second race we did together ever. Got to drive down during the winter in Michigan and went to Virginia, a little bit warmer
It was a
there.
beautiful break from fucking Michigan winter.
It's super cold.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
awesome. Go down south, do a little racing. Honestly, anybody who lives up north, the best way to take a break in the winter. I highly recommend it.
oh yeah, yeah, and if you can go even more south, Atlanta, Florida, all good stuff.
Yeah.
But Virginia was pretty nice that weekend, and this weekend, just kind of following the race a little bit. We talked last week. Kind of two of our favorites were the Huggins racing team, as well as the new boys, the MK Motorsports, who just have taken Champ Car by storm, basically.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I think we at least on Sunday here we ended up with both names on the podium, but maybe not. But we got a surprise winner up at the top, of Flat Out Nemesis in their 2009 Miatas. That's NC. We don't see those too often in Champ Car, but I think starting to see more and more of them.
I do think we will see more and more of them. You know, in the Miata world, we all make fun of the NC for being a boat, but I think it's probably a pretty decent Champ Car. You know, 2-liter, bit more power, bit easier to, get some lap time out of.
Yep.
For us AM drivers. So
yeah, and newer stuff just it usually comes with. I mean, it'll have ABS. It'll have just a lot of the nice creature comforts that come along with newer cars, and driver aids too, potentially, which sometimes can work against you in a one of these cars where you're modifying a lot of it. But in this case, it seems like it's a pretty good package, and yeah, looks like they got the win with. It looks like Pinky's out here getting second, kind of where we'd expect them, but usually at the top step though, and then MK Motorsports getting third. So
that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, even 7-hour races usually can favor those D-class cars because maybe they can stretch their fuel. But if they weren't able, if they had to do an extra pit stop, then that probably could have been the difference there.
Right.
Especially with a shorter track like that. Pit stops can be a couple more laps than other places, but yeah. And then fourth we have Where's John. They've been around Champ Car I think for a while. Actually, I don't think I've seen them in a while, especially up at the front there. And then Flat 6 Racing. So we got a Porsche Boxster, which we see more and more of those in Champ Car, but I think it's a new one that I've seen up there, but yeah. VIR North's a pretty good layout. I definitely prefer the full course.
If I had to skill all their courses, North would be second after the full course. But yeah, I prefer it. All their other courses, North, South, and Patriot, and these are the normal ones. So they have the Grand course, obviously. But North, South, and Patriot all avoid the S's.
Yep.
Very disappointing.
Very disappointing. It's kind of
climbing S's are
it's like
sweet.
The signature move of VIR, and I mean the South course gets a little bit of it, but they don't get the part that you want, and you kind of come into it at a different point.
Yeah,
that you don't really get to experience the way it should be experienced. And yeah, it's but the North layout, yeah, I'd say is also my second favorite there. But yeah, it's I would have liked to been out there, of course, this weekend. It's a race we've done before, but it's maybe next year we can do that one. But yeah, it's good to see some new faces up at the front. Seems like it was a pretty decent turnout. Maybe we've still got the big old Rona kind of over our shoulders that I'm sure affected a lot of people racing this year, especially in this cheaper series. So
Yeah, especially in the cheaper series. I know some of the professional series got a little bit of leeway because they're professional sports teams. So even early in the Rona, when sport teams like your favorite football team went back, professional race teams were allowed to go back. They could fly around, do whatever. Not so much for hobbyists.
Yep. Yeah. So
it did hit the smaller groups a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I believe we also had at Coda, as we kind of talked about last week. Coda, we had WRL racing as well.
That's right.
And
faster cars.
Much faster, as I'm seeing. It looks like most of the top is. I mean, of course, their top class is going to be shown up there, but we got teams like wheel-to-wheel racing and automatic racing, which I believe are all running GT4 cars now. It's kind of so maybe we'll see that Supra in there in a couple of years after the some of those race series get tired of them.
Yeah, maybe. I know wheel-to-wheel racing was running the Porsche Cayman GT4, and I believe they had the newest one, or the most recent one, right? The 918 MR, or anti-racing edition. Has a bit more aero and whatnot. And I mean, that car is still fairly new, right? We saw they had the 718, not MR edition, just the 718 for a little while. But I think the MR edition was only out for a year until they got it, I think. So, we're starting to see some more real race cars show up there.
Yeah.
Well, it's only a matter of time. Now, I do think I sort of already mentioned this with the Porsche, but they did a great job of using stock parts or OE parts. So maybe these teams will just try and stick with cars that are heavily production based.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to end up having to replace a racing gearbox or a racing differential.
Of course.
Which is what some other cars like the Mercedes or the Camaro.
Yeah, the Camaro has the X-Track in there, right?
Yep.
That's for those of you who don't know, that just means a lot of money.
Yes. Expensive.
Yes. Yeah, magnesium cased. I don't know if that one is, but magnesium cased sequential racing transmissions that normally only see in like prototype cars, you now have to change out in your Camaro. So that would definitely be not preferred if you can. I mean, of course, it's not like a Porsche PDK is gonna be only a couple bucks. It's still gonna cost you, but at least you can go to the dealer and maybe if you're super lucky, like some junkyard somewhere.
I'd be pretty lucky, but yeah, I've seen a couple of them with rebuilt titles. You could probably buy cheap and use it as a park car.
Kinda. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's. I mean, one thing we talked about is finding these GT4 cars in these lower, let's say, non-professional series. I've also often thought like, well, if you have this GT4 car, why wouldn't you just go to IMSA or SRO World Challenge?
Yeah.
But
here they are.
But as we said, like entry fees for WRL going to be way cheaper than IMSA.
Yeah.
So I mean, you get to still drive a really fast car, although not with slicks on it, unfortunately. But still very fast. Sequential transmissions or paddle shifted, and not full race cars. They're still production based, but still very close to basically as close as you can get.
Yeah.
Before you get into those kind of more bespoke GT3 cars.
Yeah, I mean those GT3 cars are like north of $800,000.
Yes.
So
that's starting to get into the not even we're way past 1%ers, and we're going into the 0.1%ers, maybe even further.
But you're telling me you have to be higher than the 1% to buy an $800,000 thing
And be okay with writing it off.
yes, just throwing it around track and putting it in a wall and being okay with buying a replacement.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I feel like the loan sharks would catch up to you pretty quick if you weren't. But
What if you win? Can I get a loan shark to get off my ass if I buy a GT4 car and win with it?
no, I don't think that's how that works. I think they might charge you for the trophies in them. So I don't know. Probably.
Maybe, I don't know.
Seems they just want to charge you for everything if they can. But anyway, so that's some of the amateur racing this weekend. Also, there was I think Lemons was supposed to be at Road Atlanta this weekend, but they canceled due to COVID. But instead, I guess it's not bad enough for NASA to sneak in there.
Yeah, they're okay with it.
They're okay with it, I guess. I think they had an event. I don't know if it was like a later planned one, but I just know because some of the guys in my region and Spec Miata went there, and they also had a couple races there. Looked like mostly maybe in region people that filled out the podium, which is kind of what you'd expect. They've done the track a lot more. It's like their Gingerman, potentially. If you're in that area, I'm sure I'd make Road Atlanta my Gingerman if I could.
Oh hell yeah!
But
I do love Road Atlanta.
Yeah. So
It's a great track.
So yeah, that's another event. I mean, those will probably be the same guys I'll be racing against in Florida next year for the Nationals. So I'll have to pay attention.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe you want some more practice.
Yeah,
down in
because
Daytona.
it looks like my region guys got the old bop down.
Yeah, they got smacked.
So hopefully it was just maybe not a good weekend for them, and because if I'm barely almost to the front of my region, I might have a lot more work cut out for me if they're not even close to those guys. But yeah, you never. I wasn't there, so it's hard to say exactly what happened. But yeah, so that covers all the amateur racing we were paying attention to this weekend. It's basically winding down now. There's not too many races left in most series, although
there's one series planning on doing an ice race.
Yes.
Gridlife.
Good old Gridlife. Gridlife is it's something we haven't gotten to experience yet.
Very unfortunately, honestly.
Yeah.
I tried to sign up a couple years ago, and they gave me a slot because you had to request. Well, it sells out almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But they save a couple tickets for cool guys to show up, or gals. So you write in and
maybe you have like a podcast or something.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
really popular.
listen to my nerd podcast. No, but you write in, tell them what your car is and what your experience level is and whatnot, and if they like it, they'll give you a spot. And I had the opportunity, but they saved like 10 tickets, and then these are not exact numbers. Just for all you out there, this is approximation. But they save like 10 tickets, and they'll tell like 20 people out of the however many who wrote in, you're good to go. So I was one of the people I was told I was good to go, but I was living my best Brad Miller life and got out of a meeting a few hours later, and those fucking tickets were sold out. So, and now I would only want to go as a competitor. When I first heard about it, I wanted to go as anything.
Yeah.
Because it sounds awesome. I love electronic music. I really do. Obviously, I like cars and racing cars. It sounds like a great place for me to go. And
on top of everything, at least the main festival is at Gingerman.
Yeah, which is as long as you can run a sub 140, the greatest track in the world. But I mean, I wanted to go either way. I couldn't get anybody to go with me for the first year I tried. So then the next year is when I tried to sign up as a competitor, which is when that happened. And now it's so big. Honestly, I wouldn't go as anything but a competitor just because if you're a driver, you get real bathrooms and real showers and away from the riffraff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's so big that it's like, oh no, I wanna be with drivers. I
Yeah.
wanna drive.
Yeah.
But now I've got rid of my track car and
Mhm.
partied it out.
So yeah, now I'm just on 2 wheels and 4 very small wheels.
Very small wheels, but a full set of slicks for the cart cost $200. So it's hard to complain.
No, it's definitely better in that department.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Gridlife is, I think I've gotten a lot more interested in it this year as they really, their wheel-to-wheel racing really took off this year.
It did. Yeah.
I think they're up to 70, 80 competitors at some events, and that's all like single class sprint racing kind of stuff. So that's a lot of people to have. At least I think it's that many. That's a lot of people to have on one track racing for a short period of time. Sprint racing, they all should be relatively close performance, although the cars are very different. So the guys in the back maybe aren't building to the rules. They're just bringing something they wanna race. I mean, I think I saw one car at Lemons that was also at the Gridlife event there. So. And they weren't the fastest car in Lemons, so I imagine they weren't the fastest car at Gridlife.
Certainly weren't the fastest car at Gridlife.
No, but it's about running what you brung, getting some seat time, always important.
Yeah, most important.
And
most
like
important thing.
Even if you're not racing and for first, you're still racing someone out there. I'm sure there's still someone that's going to be around your speed out there that you can have some good battles with. So
yeah, I mean, I'm moderately competitive. Generally, when I race, I want to race to win, but it doesn't happen 100% of the time. And building that racecraft, as we've already sort of talked about, is important. So if you're fighting for fifth, you're still fighting.
yeah,
You're still working on that racecraft. So good for them. Good for them getting out there on track and
yeah,
getting some practice and learning and
yeah, and if I ever finish the Starion, I've had thoughts of maybe trying to run it in a couple Gridlife events too. Being a turbo car, it's a little easier to fit into power weight class because I could just decide what power I want to run that weekend. So
yeah, I just turn it up.
So or down.
Hey, now you're thinking.
But yeah, it's been something I'm following. There's some guys that have some good YouTube videos out there that cover like the time attack, as well as some guys that are covering the wheel-to-wheel stuff too, and it's interesting. The cars are pretty cool. They're a little bit faster than your typical like champ car style cars, and they fall into, I think a lot of them fall into like ST5 and NASA, like that kind of. So some of the cars are from NASA, some of the cars are from SCCA, and then some are bespoke for the series. So it's just a lot of people coming together and jumping on board this new kind of growing series. It's definitely picking up a lot of steam.
Yeah, I mean it's exciting, especially to me. I would love to go race and then rage at a rave right after and
watch some drifters.
Yeah, I mean, they bring in professional drifters. That's cool, right? It's competition, music show, car show, lots of the riffraff, whatever you want to call them. The people who show up to watch show up in their own cars. They're enthusiasts of some type.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it seems like a good time. And as we keep saying, above all, the main festival is at Gingerman. And Gingerman is the heart and soul of North American motorsport.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, which has kind of been funny to a long time gingermanner like myself.
You mean a hipster gingermanner is what I'm
Yes,
hearing.
I liked it before. It was cool.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting to see all these people on, maybe some of these like Facebook groups and everything I'm in, arguing about gingerman lap times and that kind of thing. It's usually, normally it would be like Road Atlanta or something like that, but no, it's all about the gingerman lap times. Everyone wants that sub 140, which I have to disclose I haven't been there yet, but
You'll get there.
not for lack of trying. I mean, Miatas, they're just not fast enough, especially when you're not allowed to change them because it's a spec Miata. But
Yeah.
yeah, and champ cars could maybe reach there one day. There's the speed creep. I'm sure they would if
Riley's car could
if
probably
that
do
Riley Corvette showed up
Yeah.
there. But that's a story for another day.
it.
But yeah,
Faster than my CTSV, probably.
yeah, probably. But maybe one day I'll get sub 140. But until then, I just, if anyone from Grid and who follows Gridlife is watching, I think I just lost a ton of credibility. So I'm sorry. You guys can sign off now. It's the cat's out of the bag. Neither of us are sub 140. Unless, have you done the bike there?
I haven't put my M Solo on the bike
So,
at Gingerman.
so you probably want sub 140 then.
I mean, I have no proof, so we might as well say no. But
But
people I ride with who are faster than me
hmm
are sub 140
Okay.
substantially. But
So
who knows? I just putt along.
yeah, well, just getting that seat time.
Yeah, man.
Just get that seat time.
I'm out for a Sunday ride. Not leaning over too much because it's scary.
Yeah, if my Miata leans over, and then something's really wrong.
Yeah,
So I try to avoid
that
that.
really is scary.
But yeah, it's maybe this coming year I might find myself at a Gridlife event or two. It'd be cool.
Yeah, I hope so.
It'd be cool.
Get a car done, and I'll go with you.
Yeah.
But
Maybe one day.
on that note of you not having a good car ready to go, or a sub 140 at Gingerman,
Yeah.
I think it's time we've disappointed our one listener enough.
Yes. If you made it this far, I'm sorry. But also thank you for sticking with us. But yeah, well,
hopefully these will get a little smoother as we keep going. And again, thanks.
yeah, and we'll be back.
These are
again.
conversations we enjoy having. And
Yeah, I think we might have a bonus one between now and the next weekend of Motorsports. So maybe we'll go into some more technical stuff versus the news, because we're not really a Formula One podcast, but it might sound like it from the last.
Yeah, so far it kind of sounds like it. I'm really not trying to be. It's just I don't know, a lot of news coming out of F1 recently.
Yeah, there's just so many races in a row, and I mean, a lot of big things happening. So
yeah,
it's kind of the flavor of the month right now, but we like to talk other things too. So, but yeah, we'll be back again, and we hope you guys listen in for that one. So till then, we'll see you then.
So yeah.